So we get a lot of equipment here through the Veteran Small Business Enhancement Act for the farm. We just got this Gator from Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, shipped in. When you get these, you have no idea what they're going to show up like. This one I'm super excited about. It had batteries in it. The fluids were still in it. So I charged up the batteries last night, and you're going to get to experience the moment of truth with me to see if it actually starts. Let's find out. All right.
Lights came on.
Oh, nothing. Oh, wait. Nothing. Oh, denied. So I've got this back from maintenance. Turns out it was a fuel pump solenoid that was keeping it from starting, and it was blowing the ignition fuse. So got it serviced while I was at it, and man, this thing's in great shape. And now I'm gonna start painting it. I've got it torn apart a little bit. This is the second one I've done, so I've learned a bit. You know, when you take these front fenders off here, one of the key things you got to know is you have to pop this shock loose right here in order to get the fender off. It's just the way these things are made. And I'll take the fenders off, and I've got them over here, and then I'll get them, I'll paint them John Deere green. Pretty simple, and I'll show you how to do that later on. Today what I'm doing is I'm going to paint this dash and then all this plastic here. I use an SEM trim paint. This stuff bonds beautifully with this plastic, and it provides UV protection and renews that plastic. Maybe I'll get to this bed here. It's got to be cleaned up and sanded down a little bit and primed. But, you know, we'll make some progress today, and I'll keep you updated. Now, the key to good results is the prep. So, you know, I'm a big fan of this Eastwood pre-painting prep for things like this plastic, because this stuff is great. You just spray it on and then wipe it off. And what it does is it really gets in there and cleans off wax and dirt and any sort of grease that's in there, so that you can then have a nice clean surface to paint on. And that's really important, because if you've got dirt and stuff on here, the paint just won't stick right no matter what you do. Now, I use this SEM trim black paint for all my projects, because once this stuff is on, it does not come off. It applies evenly and it dries quick. So, you know, I've got everything taped here, you know, reasonably well. You know, if you're looking for perfection on this video, you're in the wrong place. This is for a farm. So my purpose here is to paint this stuff and provide some UV protection, not show quality support. And, you know, I'm going to paint over some things that maybe weren't the same color when we started, like this gas cap, but it's going to hold. We've got it all cleaned up, and then we just, you know, give it a little SEM spray paint here. When I'm done, this will look brand new, and it will last for many, many years. This SEM paint is not cheap, but I've used it a bunch of times over the years, and it has lasted and lasted and lasted, and it will restore old plastic to new like nobody's business. One of the things I really like about this SEM paint is that you can do the steering wheels and the controls with it, and it will soak into that. It never comes off, and it really restores the UV protection to the steering wheel. Now, these dashes on these Gators, you know, you can see where all the signal lights and indicators are. That's just a sticker that goes over that. So peel the sticker off and order a new one for 20 bucks. And then you can paint everything and get it back to the way it needs to be before you put that sticker on. So much simpler. And I just leave the bulbs in when I paint, because I'm going to replace those bulbs with nice new LED bulbs anyway. Now, this bed is a little rusty. I love these military surplus Gators, because The bed is all steel. It folds down to make a nice flat bed, but they do rust a little bit. So what I like to use back here is I clean it up a little bit with a wire brush on the angle grinder, wipe it clean with that so that there's nothing on it. And then I like to use this Eastwood rust encapsulator. Now this stuff comes in a spray can like I'm using right here, and it also comes in the paint on version. I've used this on everything from undercarriages of tractors to, you know, I don't know, everything. It's an excellent product that bonds to the rust and converts it into a paintable surface, or it can just be the final surface if you're doing an undercarriage. And so you just spray this stuff on, just like any old other spray paint, and then treat it like primer. And we'll come back and paint over this maybe this evening, maybe tomorrow. We'll see how it looks like. But yeah, not the cheapest product again, but boy, it sure does work well. All right, so I've got the part that I trimmed off that needs to be taped up and covered up. I've got it all cleaned up. I've got it primed with that Eastwood primer. Everything's wiped down with the cleaner, and I'm ready to start doing some John Deere green paint. Now, for the most part, I'm going to be using just a 87-cent Harbor Freight paintbrush and some John Deere green Rust-Oleum paint from Tractor Supply. But there's a few spots you can see where it makes more sense to use a rattle can of spray paint just to get into the cracks and crevices. But for the most part, you know, it's just going to be good old-fashioned paint. Now, this won't produce a perfect job. It won't produce one that doesn't have some runs in it, and you're going to see some brush streaks. But when this paint hardens, it's going to be fine. It's going to be solid. It's going to protect it from the sun and the elements, and it's exactly what I need on the farm. So we just don't need to spray it, the whole thing like this. It's so much faster, cheaper, and easier to do it this way. So we'll let you know how it turns out. And there you have it. It's a coat of paint with a little bit of rattle can and a whole lot of John Deere green from the Tractor Supply with a paintbrush from Harbor Freight. You know, again, I can see some runs, I can see some brush marks, but looks a heck of a lot better than it did. And once it dries, it's going to serve its purpose nicely. Now, I will spray these fenders because the plastic fenders are really, really hard to do with a paintbrush. It's just easier to spray them with all the nooks and crannies and stuff. But I'll show you how I do that on the next one. So today I'm doing painting the fenders. Now these are plastic, and so I want to paint them just so they have better UV protection, and two, so that they look good. Now I've already cleaned them up with my normal cleaner product, but the key to getting good adhesion is to use an adhesion promoter. Now I used to use Bulldog adhesion promoter, but that stuff is ridiculously expensive. So I've switched to U-Pol, and all you gotta do is just spray this stuff on, just like you were any other paint. And then you gotta let it sit for about 5 minutes. And what it does is it causes the plastic to open up so that you can paint it. Now, another way to do this is what they call the flame technique, where you quite literally use a torch to do the same thing. But I think there's a high likelihood I'd screw that up. So I prefer the chemical method here with this paint adhesion promoter. This will really makes it stick the way it should. Now, I'm going to spray these with my trusty Harbor Freight HVLP that I bought years ago for 20 bucks. It's the best way to do these plastic ones. You could do it with a rattle can, but you know, I'm just going to use my same gallon of Rust-Oleum farm and equipment John Deere green. I thin it down with a little reducer that I bought at the Tractor Supply, and then add my little bit of hardener in there, and we're looking for about the right consistency. It's a matter of judgment, but I want it to be able to flow through the filter that I'm about to put it through, and then atomize out of the gun properly. There are mixtures on the side of the cup, but they don't really apply because, well, these catalysts and this isn't designed for using these precise mixtures, so I just kind of mix it up until I feel good about it. You kind of have to figure that one out yourself. Now we're going to pour that mixture through the filter here. I'm not sure I can do this one-handed, but it's going to filter into my Harbor Freight HVLP gun. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's going to work. So we just pour it through and let it filter out. That helps me gauge the consistency, and it also gets out any of the impurities that might be hanging out. Now this little paint gun holder here that I got mounted to the bench, again, I bought that from Harbor Freight a few years ago, and it comes in handy. And we're just going to filter this on into the HVLP gun, and then we'll get started. Now you got to mess with the settings of the air and maybe, you know, your mixture a little bit to get where you feel comfortable with it. And that's a moving target. And I promise you, if you've ever, you know, sprayed a car or something like that, it's not going to look like that. It's going to come out gloppy. It's going to come out a little rough, and that's okay. This paint is very forgiving. It'll self-level itself. And the worst case is you come back with a paintbrush and put a little more on it. So we just do our best, and it'll come out fine. And there you go. I got these painted. Gotta let them cure for more than a couple of days, and I'll take them out in the sunlight tomorrow when it's not cloudy, so I can see if I missed any spots that I'll just touch up with a little spray paint. But overall, they'll be fine. And here she is, all finished. Turned out real nice. I've still got to fix the whoopee light on top, but I've got a new one of those coming in. Other than that, though, it's ready to go. Everything's painted, rust-proofed, new seats installed, and most importantly, unlike the last time, it actually starts. So, what a great addition to my other Gator as part of the fleet.